in class. Today I will be reviewing Derek's speech. His claim was that the practice of catch shares would prevent the negative effects of overfishing. The fact of the matter is that he fails to adequately supply enough data to come up with a valid conclusion. In his first supporting claim, he goes on to say that catch sharing has economic benefits for both fishermen and fishing communities. The advocate defines catch shares as several fishery management strategies that allocate a specific portion of the total allowable fishery catch to individuals, cooperatives, communities, or other entities. Each of the recipient of a catch share is directly accountable to stop fishing when its exclusive allocation is reached. However, this does not elaborate on how exactly catch sharing works. According to the Icelandic Fisheries website, catch sharing works, each share is given to a specific group or fisherman depending on previous history. So therefore, if a fisherman had history of fishing very little fish and one had history of fishing big loads of fish every year, they would be given more shares, and the smaller fishermen were given smaller shares. Realistically speaking, this meant that bigger fishermen were stabilized and smaller fishermen were stabilized. So you were only kept to the certain amount that represented what you've fished in years past. There's only one exception to this. If you want to start fishing more than the allotted share, you have to buy more shares, which you can buy from same fisheries or other fishermen who no longer want their shares. In his supporting claim, he did not bring up any factual data that catch sharing would provide any economical benefits to fishermen, other than a couple hypothetical examples. If I can recall, one of the examples he used was that since there's a smaller production of fishing, or smaller input of fishing, there would be more demand for these fishes. Therefore, ideally, a fisherman can raise the market value or the price of his product. However, this isn't backed by any evidence. He does not use any testimonies. He does not use any fishermen's examples saying that they've used this idea to raise their prices. The advocate makes it seem as if catch sharing is the fairest alternative for fishermen, which is ultimately misleading because in reality it is only benefiting the large fishing companies. According to an article on thebaycitizen.org, more than 3,700 vessels are no longer active in the 10 defined fisheries. The 10 defined fishing areas that operated under catch shares since before 2010. This could account for as many as 18,000 lost jobs. In the same article, awarding shares in the Pacific has actually benefited trawlers. Trawlers are actually the big vessels, ships that have their gigantic nets that sweep up anything that's under in the ocean, oftentimes bringing in loads of bycatch, which they end up tossing back overboard. Now, like I said before, these trawlers have the ability to pick up as many as they like because they have more shares. So therefore, they can ideally sweep up more and more fish, which is pretty ironic because these trawlers were actually blamed for the demise of some fish species such as the canary and yellow-eyed rockfish. Now this makes me ask, why are these larger vessels of bigger interest than those smaller boats who are losing their jobs? Is it fair to say that catch sharing has only economic benefits for fishermen or big fishing companies only? In his second supporting claim, he goes on to say that catch sharing can improve the local ocean marine environment. Derek talks about how catch sharing allows fish stocks to replenish, resulting in protecting its populations from dropping to very low susceptible levels, and as a result leaving space for growth. However, the problem I have with this is that catch sharing is relatively new, and in order to track population growth, it takes years and years, and it takes research on different generations of fish to come up with actual valid conclusions. My colleague also stated that 25% of the world's captured fish end up being thrown overboard as bycatch. According to UC Rashid Somalia, a professor of oceans and fishery economics at the University of British Columbia, Canada. The goal of such individual transfer quota, which also means catch share, the owners of this, is to make sure that their quotas are filled with the most valuable fish available. This behavior is clearly detrimental to conservation. The incentives for high grading and discarding are reported to be larger under these ITQ schemes, otherwise catch share schemes. Thus, the extra cost of monitoring and enforcement that will likely be needed to curb this tendency may undermine the efficiency benefits that these catch shares are supposed to create. Why is this important, you may ask? Well, at the end of the day, you have fishermen tossing aside fish of lesser value, when in reality the dispersed fish could have been just used to feed people. But since overfishing has become a problem and catch shares have been implemented, these people are no longer allowed to bring more than their allotted amount of fish. So regardless, they're going to have to throw it away. As you can see, there are far too many questions to be asked of this subject, and it is evident that the advocate fails to provide enough information for us to draw a conclusion. So as a result, I must go ahead and dismiss this argument. Thank you.
All right, the structural stuff is fine. You label the claim. You get to the secondary issues. You define the issue of catch shares, again reminding people what's going on here and explaining how the process actually works, and then explaining why that this is a potential economic boondoggle that's going on here, where it's benefiting the big companies at the expense of the smaller companies automatically. The advocate's claim had to do, I think, a little bit more with overfishing and the environment. Yours, in this particular case, has to do with the economic consequences there. So I think you've got a good, strong argument on the economic consequences. I'm not sure that it addresses the issue of overfishing, which seemed like that wasn't that his original kind of goal. So I think you need to put something a little bit more effective into place for the fishing part of it. I thought your economic argument is a good one, though. It shows why there is, in fact, a potential negative consequence to going to this. But this is not a policy argument, so some of those arguments are less relevant as a consequence. You challenge the advocate's points on hypothetical examples. You have to rely on a couple hypothetical examples also. But I did like the statistic that you had about the number of vessels that are no longer in service and the number of jobs that are going on or being lost there. I thought that was a good summary and an exit line for that particular point. All right, you get to the next point, and I think, again, you kind of explain how this might actually be counterproductive because it encourages trawlers which engage in the most egregious sorts of behavior that are destructive to the environment. I thought that was okay. The explanation about how it becomes the basis of, we're only going for a particular kind of fish, which means that the other sorts of fish get disposed of. I'm not exactly sure that how this catch share thing works if you're taking in the other fish and keeping them at the same time, if that changes the way your catch is measured. I think I understand the point that you're making here, which says that if you toss over half of what you get, that's the crappy part, then basically you've only got half of your share, and you can still fish for the more valuable fish. That seems to be the explanation that's going on there. I think that just needed to be clarified a little bit. But I think the argument that you're making there is that that's going to be as environmentally damaging, and it definitely applies to the overfishing argument that's being talked about, and so that needs to be qualified a little bit more. I also appreciated that you found some evidence that talks specifically about these things, and you cite those authorities. It would be nice if there was more on this. Like you said, it's relatively new, and I don't know that you can dismiss it out of hand, but I think what you can say is that it's premature to make the judgment that the advocate is making in this situation, and that there are substantial reasons to doubt that that would be the outcome. All right, thank you.